Every ancient execution method ranked by pain. Number 10. Keelhauling. Keelhauling was a maritime punishment designed specifically to terrify sailors and enforce discipline at sea. A sailor was tied to a rope and dragged underwater from one side of the ship to the other. This meant passing under the ship's keel. While there are mentions of the practice in ancient Greece, it is most reliably documented with the Dutch and English navies of the 16th and 17th centuries. The hull was covered in sharp barnacles, which tore the victim's flesh. If dragged slowly, the person drowned. If dragged quickly, their head could hit the keel, causing fatal injury. It was feared for its brutality. Number 9. Boiling, a medieval execution setup. An execution method using a large cauldron of water, oil, or molten lead. The person was lowered into the bubbling liquid, often slowly. This peeled the skin and cooked the muscle. Death came from severe burns and organ failure. While stories link it to figures like the Roman Emperor Nero, strong evidence for this is scarce. It was, however, a confirmed legal punishment in 16th century England under King Henry VIII, used for poisoners. On number 8, we have sawing, a method of execution used in various parts of Europe and Asia. The most common form was vertical bisection. The victim was hung upside down with their legs apart. This position would keep them conscious longer by ensuring blood flowed to the brain, though the extent of this effect is debated. Two executioners would then saw the body in half, starting at the groin. The saw tore through tissue and organs, causing massive internal bleeding. Number 7. Crushing by elephant, a form of execution used in South and Southeast Asia, particularly in ancient India. Elephants were trained to kill prisoners. Dramatized accounts, sometimes referred to as Gunga Rao, describe elephants being instructed to break the victim's limbs one by one before delivering the final crush. In other cases, the elephant would slowly apply pressure to the head or chest until it imploded. This was a public display of a ruler's power over both man and beast. Next on number 6, we have poina kule, the punishment of the sack from ancient Rome, reserved for the murder of a parent. The person was sewn into a leather sack with a dog, a rooster, a viper, and an ape. The sack was then thrown into water. The panicked animals would attack the person inside the dark, confined space. Due to the tightness of the sack, death was often caused by suffocation before the person drowned. Number 5. The Judas cradle, a device often called the pyramid impalement. It is frequently attributed to the medieval Spanish Inquisition, but there is no reliable historical evidence that it was ever actually used as a method of torture or execution. It is likely a later invention or myth. The concept involved a pyramid-shaped seat. The victim would be suspended by ropes and slowly lowered, so the point would impale the anus or vagina, causing tearing, infection, and internal damage. Number 4. The blood eagle, a brutal ritual attributed to the Norse Vikings. Its historical reality is intensely debated by historians. There is no archaeological proof, and sagas describing it may be literary inventions designed to demonize enemies. The process involved cutting the victim's back open, severing the ribs from the spine, and pulling them outward to form wings. The lungs were then supposedly pulled out through the openings. While a person would likely die early in the procedure from shock and blood loss, some studies suggest it was anatomically possible. On the number 3, we have lingchi, also known as death by 1,000 cuts. This was a formal execution method in China until it was banned in 1905. It was used for crimes like high treason. The condemned person was tied to a post. An executioner used a sharp knife to systematically remove portions of the body. Flesh was sliced from the chest, arms, and thighs. The goal was to keep the victim alive as long as possible, while they endured hundreds of cuts before a final fatal cut was made. Number 2, the head crusher, a device whose historical existence is dubious. Like the Judas cradle, it is widely considered a historical myth or exaggeration, not a device that was reliably used in the medieval period. The supposed design involved a cap that was tightened onto the head with a screw. This would first shatter the teeth and jaw. As pressure increased, the skull would fracture, and brain matter would be squeezed out. Number 1 and the last in the list is scaphism. Also known as the boats, this punishment is attributed to the ancient Persian Empire. Its reality is debated, as the main accounts come from Greek writers like Plutarch and may be exaggerated propaganda. The process involved trapping a victim between two boats, with their head, hands, and feet protruding. They were force-fed milk and honey to induce severe diarrhea, while more of the mixture was poured on them to attract insects. Left in a stagnant pond, the victim would be eaten alive by vermin and insects breeding in the filth. The daily feeding prolonged the torture, with one account claiming a man survived for 17 days. Death would result from septic shock, dehydration, and being devoured. History often remembers empires for their achievements, their monuments, and their victories. But behind every civilization was a system of punishment designed to terrify as much as it did to control. These execution methods were not just about death. They were about pain, fear, and making an example that no one would forget. Understanding them isn't about glorifying cruelty. It's about recognizing how power was enforced when mercy was optional, and how far humanity has had to crawl just to define what justice should mean.